to stream the meeting. Okay, we are live on YouTube. Hello, YouTube.
You alright?
So,
Yeah.
what was that?
Welcome back.
Oh, it was me.
I thought someone was screaming at you there, Coops.
No, I went into YouTube there and it went, instead of going in where I could pick the video, there was like a short playing straight away.
Fair enough. Um, okay. Hello, YouTube. I'm gonna hit record here. So first of all, to all of our viewers on YouTube, thank you for watching us. I know we're getting some okay viewership now on these live streams, which is great. So if you have any comments for us, pop them in the chat. Um, we are going to do this as a two-parter: the Japanese Grand Prix review and the Bahrain Grand Prix preview. These are going to be recorded as one episode. We're going to split them up for Spotify and Apple. So if it sounds a bit weird, me ending one podcast and starting another, that's why you're getting all of the raw live behind the scenes here. But yes, any comments or questions related to the Japan Grand Prix or the Bahrain Grand Prix, pop them in the chat if you're listening. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Everything F1 podcast. Joining me this evening for our Japanese Grand Prix review, as much as it'll be, is Coops and Timo. Evening, lads. How are you?
I'm all right. I think I've just woke up from the Grand Prix. To be fair. No.
I did go for a nap after the Grand Prix, but then mostly woke up just in time for the European Le Mans series, which was a lot better, it must be said. Not that the bar was that high.
It certainly wasn't. This year I decided not to wake up at 6 a.m. for it, and I'm very glad I didn't because I got to fast forward through half the race. We will get into the Japanese Grand Prix review in a sec. There are some interesting talking points, even if the race itself wasn't exactly a classic. We get into that in a sec. Before we do, of course, we are Everything F1. You can find us on all socials at JoinEF1 or on TikTok at EF1 Official. You can also check us out on everythingf1.com for daily news and articles. And if you are a motorsport fan, check out our sponsors, theraceworks.com, for all of your F1 and motorsport for all of your F1 and motorsport merch needs. Use code EF1 at checkout for 10% off site wide. And of course, we are now on YouTube. All of our podcast episodes are on YouTube now. You can watch us live on every episode as we record them. We stream live on YouTube now. Every episode will be up during the week as well as the podcast streaming services like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So do us a favor, hop over to YouTube, see our smiling mugs and Coop's very bright orange jersey as usual. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit the bell, get notified whenever we upload new content. All that good YouTubey stuff. We've hit 100 subscribers, which we're delighted about. Only small, but we're getting there. Our next target is 500, and we'd love to hit that by the summertime of Formula One. So help us out with that. Head over to YouTube, like and subscribe onto the channel there. Now then, the Japanese Grand Prix. As I said in the intro, not exactly a classic. It hasn't been for a couple of years now, since Pierre Gasly ran through a board and nearly crashed into a truck. And, it's pretty poor to say that, a driver nearly killing himself is the last time the Japanese Grand Prix was interesting. Timo, what did you make of it? Are you glad you woke up early for it?
It happened, that's for damn certain. I know that
That's a
much.
fact. Yep.
Whether or not I'm glad I woke up for it, oh, it's I like an early start as much as the next person, but at the same time, I wouldn't have necessarily minded staying in bed a bit longer. I think it's one thing to have a race like that because we're not going to have a classic every time. It's a shame that Suzuka hasn't been a classic for a couple of years, as you say, but I think it definitely wasn't helped by the fact that for those of us in the world that were stuck with Sky Sports and only that commentary for it, we're finding new and creative ways to try and enjoy the benefits of being deaf.
Yes, if you are lucky enough to have not enjoyed the Sky F1 commentary this week, obviously Crofty couldn't exactly turn around and say, "This is boring as hell. Turn on to something else," or hit pause, have a nap, and come back later. But it certainly didn't help that he had Jack, I am the most boring and rigid man in the world, Villeneuve beside him, shutting down all of his commentary bits.
it's an interesting test of a Grand Prix quality when, or a Grand Prix commentator rather, when you get a Grand Prix like this, because I then later in the day watched some of the Channel 4 highlights, which obviously they've got F1 TV there, so they've got the same commentary team for that. And you don't, it still doesn't necessarily make the race itself any
Mm.
better, but in terms of passing the time, it just flowed a lot better with the conversational tones, and you just go, it's like when you've got to fill a red flag period, you're going to have to find a way to do something with it, and some people are just better at it than others, and that was very apparent here.
It certainly was, and I mean, I can't knock Jack Villeneuve for telling the truth, at least, but he doesn't exactly. I don't think he's the most popular person, and I say that as someone who has lived in Montreal, and the Montreal track is one of my favorites. But it was obviously where Jack is from. But yeah, not great. Coops, what did you make of the Grand Prix that, as Timo correctly states, happened on the weekend?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, when my alarm went off at 5:45 in the morning to go down, I was expecting something, and yeah, it's weird because you do get certain races that you just know that this is not going to be good, and I think when everybody survived the first maybe three or four corners and there was literally nothing to talk about, I was like, yeah, France 2019. It just wasn't anything.
Why France 2019 when you can have China 2025?
Yeah, but there was a sprint race. There was a couple of conversations. France, I think, in the highlights that lasted about 6 minutes from Formula One, they showed everyone's pit stop in full.
Before I
And
was
that,
amazed when YouTube put it when they put the highlights up on YouTube for this one, and it was 8 minutes long. I was going, how have you managed that? How many different ways are you showing Lando Norris cutting the grass?
yeah, yeah, and it was very quick after the end of the race that they managed to do that. Normally, it takes a wee bit longer. So yeah, it's a shame, but you know, it's one of those ones where we've got what 24, 25 races, sprint races included. They're not all going to be classics. Some of them are going to be classics for different reasons. Some are going to be classics because they're just mental. And then we're going to get one or two or potentially more that are just a bit, eh,
Mm.
I
or
think the stat I saw was that in 2024 you got 70 less overtakes than the previous year, despite having two more Grand Prix. And this
Oh,
year, every driver that's got on pole for a race, sprint
has
included,
one.
has then gone on to win.
Yeah.
And you just go,
The
that's
most
not gone to plan, has it?
the most damning stat that I saw of this Grand Prix, unfortunately, is that it's the first time, it's only the fourth time in history this has ever
Hmm.
happened, and it's only the first time it's happened at a permanent track that the top six finished exactly where they started.
Yeah,
The
saw
only
that.
other times that it happened, it's quite recently. I think it goes back to 2019 or 2020. It's Monaco, Singapore, and Monaco again. It's the three times that that has happened. The top six finish where they started, and it's the first time in history it's ever happened. All three of them are street tracks. It's the first time it's ever happened at a permanent track, which is unfortunately not good. So I suppose the first thing to talk about then is what can be done to fix Suzuka? Suzuka
Look,
is the driver's track. All the drivers love it in a similar vein as Monaco. If you played the F1 games, it is a riotously good fun track to drive. And you can like Ollie Behrman was hopping out of the car in qualifying saying that is the most fun I've ever had in a Formula One car. And then every single driver got out after the race and said that was really boring, wasn't it? So what do they do? Timo, I'll start with you.
don't think it's Suzuka itself that needs fixing, it's the cars. Once
Mm,
again, I think it's the same problem that Monaco has in the same way that everyone loves to poo-poo Monaco. And I go, well, no, it's not Monaco's fault. It's the fact that you've got these cars that are bloody massive now, and you can't actually do anything with them. You watch an F2 or an F3 race, yeah, there's still not a lot of overtaking. There seem that's a damn sight more than you get in F1. And you go, you get some drivers throwing some really interesting moves around some corners that you just know you're not going to get away with in the F1 cars. And that's why I'm hopeful a bit for next year to see what that new iteration of car can do at some of these circuits. And I think it's not helped as well by the fact of the loophole with the regulations. All the teams have pretty much found a way around what was the initial intention of them when they came back in 2022, which has meant that it's now, as Fred was so alluded to, a qualifying championship of you're kind of just all stuck on rails behind each other. And that
mm,
is something we did see sort of in China. You got a bit of overtaking, but again, not as much as you'd maybe expect from a track like that. And you saw it here. I hope we don't see it in Bahrain. I think there's going to be a different kettle of fish to deal with there, which we can get to in our preview. But I think some tracks where we're not used to seeing it. We'll see it more, and it's not just going to be Suzuka this year. That's going to be a permanent track where we have this kind of performance. And I hope I'm wrong. So I hope maybe we can have some kind of craziness. But if there's no DNFs, if there's no reliability issues, there's none of this, then it might just be a long year.
It certainly will. And you mentioned like Formula 2 cars. I've just done a very quick search on it there. The Formula 2 cars this year are longer and wider than the 2006 Formula 1 cars. So anyone saying, "Oh, go back to smaller cars," unfortunately, that is completely impossible because they'd have to change 4 series worth of cars to make them all smaller again. You're right, that is the problem. But like there's surely ways that they can be made smaller. They will be made a little bit smaller next year. A big factor in it, obviously, is just the sheer amount of crap that's in the back. The engines themselves are piddly. They're smaller than the engine in my own road car, like in terms of the internal combustion engine, but the batteries, the turbos, the MGUH and MGUK, all the gubbins that goes on top of it makes them massive. And they need just so much extra safety blankets around it, and the cars are way safer and all that sort of stuff. But there is still surely things that could be done to make them smaller and thinner as a good one, and lighter.
If you
Coops,
look at the Super Formula race, sorry, just as a quick aside that they had in Suzuka double round a couple of weeks ago, and again,
mm,
obviously much smaller cars there. You've got some great racing out of it,
yeah,
so it's doable. You
it
just
is
got to find a
doable.
way around it.
Yeah, Coops, you echo that it's the cars, not the track.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, these cars are 6 foot wide, or they're 2 meters wide, which is more than 6 foot. Because I'm six
They're,
foot two, and it's 1.88 meters.
they're wider than London buses, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah.
at their widest
So
point.
they are big things, they're units. And if you want to talk about an advert for bringing back V10 or V8 with sustainable fuel, this is it.
Mm.
But I think I've heard that it's going to be rejected. I don't know if it's rejection because of the development for the new sort. Maybe they're looking at the next iteration of Formula One, like not
Hon
this 26, but maybe
Honda,
2030.
it needed a 4 out of 5 approval. 4 out of the 5 engine manufacturers needed to approve it, and Honda and Audi have both said no. At least that's the report. I don't know if that's an official report, but or they are set to reject it because Audi are coming in because of this new um not as hybrid engine because they see it as more relevant for their road cars. Honda have stayed in because same thing. And Mercedes are favor the hybrid as well because they more than anyone have adapted Formula One tech into their road cars, all of their road cars, not just the AMG One hypercar. Um, but you're right for the 2028, 2029,
Yeah,
there
well,
is a possibility for that.
and why not?
Mm.
If they're looking at hybrids for sustainability reasons because you want to try and get away from the reliance on fossil fuels, then why don't you just become 100% sustainable fuel and you just put a V10 and a V8 in it?
Mm.
The question we look at again, because how many times do we do this when you compare it to IndyCar and you go to Monaco and you can't pass, and then you watch the Indy 500 and everyone's on the edge of their seat because you just don't know what's about to happen.
Mm.
Should Formula One become more spec? Should it be more about drivers and more about, you know, the cars, maybe not in so much reliance on the cars and technology and what did that team do against that team? Is it more about driving, entertainment, and the talent of the actual driver themselves? You know, what is it that Formula One wants to be now? Because it's
It's always
certainly
meant to be
not
trying
the
to be that balance, isn't it? But it seems to be leaning more one way than the other at the moment, and
yeah.
that's now becoming to its detriment.
Well, it's also a question, as you said, about the car. So I saw a post today. Again, I won't quote the source. I'm not 100% sure how reliable it is, but had to have come from somewhere that the proposed South Africa Grand Prix won't be in Kyalami,
Mhm.
which is ridiculous. But will in fact be on a newly designed, essentially street circuit, designed beside one of their stadiums in Cape Town. So it'll essentially be Miami in Cape Town. What a stupid bloody idea that is. We already can't race on street circuits. We're going as it was, well, with the exception of one. We're going to Bahrain next, which is a lovely, big, wide circuit. We should get some overtaking because at least there's two back-to-back DRS zones. Um, so we might get some overtaking. And again, the cars actually fit on the damn track. You can go 3 or 4 wide through some of the corners. And Saudi is a bit of an anomaly as street tracks go, purely just because it is such a it's a super high downforce but super high speed track. So even on the DRS straights, like the wake off the cars is massive because they all have big wings. So the DRS effect is way more powerful. But beyond that, like Miami is going to be crap. Imola, Monaco, Spain, Canada, Austria. Austria might be all
Canada's
right.
the first one where we might have some because of the weather.
We might have some because of the weather. Austria should be good. Silverstone should be good. Belgium, if it rains, which is likely. Hungary, if there's a crash. Holland was pretty good last year, actually.
But
Italy
again,
is the worst example of like Italy should be the best race of the year, and I'm going to it, so I hope it kind of is. But the biggest problem with Italy is they all run with no downforce, so DRS has absolutely zero effect, and
yeah,
that's
and
just the summer.
you end up with a DRS train for half
Yeah,
of it,
and
or
that's
most
just
of the race, and that's it.
that's just looking at the summer. That's just to the summer break. Like we could go on. Baku, Singapore. Singapore last year was boring as hell. Um, Texas, Mexico, Brazil. Brazil would be incredible because Brazil's always incredible. Las Vegas, surprisingly, will throw up good because it's literally been designed for overtakes. Qatar, unfortunately, will probably be a bit dull, and so will Abu Dhabi. Um, so, and now they're talking about bringing in another one. I just find that strange.
I just don't like. I just kind of touched on there. What did Formula One want to be?
Mm,
You've got it's quite a saturated market in terms of the different sport that you've got your supercars, you've got your Le Mans, you've got IndyCar. Formula One years ago, it was the place to be. That's where everybody wanted to be. That's not the case anymore. Look at Jack Aitken, who just decided, he tried to get into Formula One. Did he get a race, I think, during COVID, in the
Yeah,
Williams, I'm sure.
Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. And he himself just decided, you know what? This isn't working for me. Now he's doing well, and I think he's over it. Is it GT? I think he was doing last I heard. But he carved himself his own career without it, and it's not to the detriment of himself. It's not to say that he failed. He just thought, I want to
Again,
do
you see this
something
with
else.
other drivers that have gone into to F2 and either not graduated or just been passed over for whatever reason. They go off to IndyCar or something like this, and they go and have a brilliant career. Or you have XF1 drivers that, again, for whatever reason, it didn't work for them, and then you go, oh, they're not actually a bad driver. It was just maybe the cars in F1 or whatever
Hmm.
reason that within Formula One. It's yeah, it does raise up some questions. And normally the question is it sport or entertainment? And there's definitely still questions about that going around, including after this weekend. But
mm.
like you say, you've also got this other thing of it's got a bit of an identity issue, which usually is a midlife crisis sort of thing. But F175, so I don't know quite what we do with that.
No,
It's
that's true.
it's. I have no doubt that this debate is going to come back up over the next couple of weeks. We might be able to avoid it for Bahrain and Saudi, like I said during this triple header. But I have no doubt that come Miami and Monaco, obviously, and Imola, we will revisit it. But let's actually have a quick look at. There's no point going through all the teams and drivers because half of them finished where they started. But a couple of the key talking points, I think, is I'm going to say the Red Bull family, because they are interesting. Again, not necessarily where they finished or how they finished, but a couple of key points in it. Obviously, we've talked a lot about them over the past couple of weeks with Liam Lawson being dropped for Yuki Tsunoda. The drama over the weekend was that Lawson outqualified Tsunoda by one position. And is Tsunoda unhappy with the car? Did he do very well? Is Lawson all this going on? Meanwhile, Isaac Hadjar pops it in eighth and is now the second highest scoring Red Bull car on the grid, which is incredible. Max Verstappen led from pole and dominated the weekend, but Yuki finished 12th and Lawson finished
17th.
17th. So Red Bull, they kind of got away from a lot of the talk come the result because it worked out for them, except for Hadjar being better than anybody thought. But Timo, do you think that the news will sort of die off on them now? Have they dodged a bullet with putting Yuki in that car, or is this going to rear its head again? Should they be allowed just kind of brush it under the rug?
It's too soon to tell, I think. In some ways, it depends on what another team does, which we'll get to, and how much of the spotlight they take in kind of mimicking Red Bull and going, that looks like a great idea for how to run a team. Let's try
Mm.
that instead. And Red Bull going, even we're looking at you going, I don't think that's the best idea, guys. But with Red Bull, yeah, it was kind of is Verstappen and Hadjar doing, in Verstappen's case, even more so than we kind of thought was possible from him, and Hadjar definitely doing what we thought was more than possible for him, and that's enough to paper over any of the other cracks that there might have been over the course of the weekend. Um, it is kind of amusing that after all of this drama with the Red Bull and Racing Bulls and Lawson Sonoda and all this sort of thing, that Sonoda then does go and finish in exactly the same position that Lawson finished in China. And you go, I love what we've done here, people.
Mm.
But again, I was talking about this on another Formula One podcast, and we're so unsure of how to measure this by with any of the yardsticks available to us because we're going to get sucked into how Red Bull have done this, and that's not necessarily the right way of going about it.
Mm.
So we're going, okay, Red Bull gave Lawson 2 races to measure him by. We should give Yuki 2 races, and if he's terrible in Bahrain as well, then by Jeddah, we'll think of something else to do. But you can't do that necessarily because you've got to compare him to himself with a whole of the different kind of metrics that Lawson obviously didn't have. And then on the Lawson side of it, okay, yeah, not a great weekend, but it is a brand new car compared to last year, and he's getting to drive it the first time with no preseason testing, and it's again very different from the Red Bull, which was the whole point of the argument in the first place for a lot of this.
Mm.
So you're kind of not in exactly the same spot of where you were, but you can see where you've just been, and there's kind of like the echo of you waving at you and going, "Oh Christ, what have we done here? We're not really sure anymore."
And they have sort of dug themselves into a hole on this. We spoke about this last week, myself and Coops. By all means, go check out our episode up on YouTube about the state of Red Bull, which we spoke about in quite depth after the swap was announced. And we mentioned it then. I'll just bring it up again that they gave Lawson 2 races. Will they give Yuki 2 races? Helmut Marko says he'll get the whole season, but what does Helmut Marko know and what control does he have? None. In this scenario, but I think they've backed themselves into a corner, and it looks worse now because Hadjar is doing better than anybody expected. But they can't. If they swap Yuki and Hadjar, for example, and I wouldn't put it past them, then and Hadjar doesn't work out, then they are screwed,
No, then
completely
they've got
screwed.
F2 drivers. We've got more. We can keep bringing in more. It's fine.
Do you think they'd want it? Do you think what's
At
his
that
name?
point,
The
they've
young
backed
lad.
themselves into a corner. They just bring Lindblad in, then they bring Goethe in, then they bring Marty in. You just keep going, keep going. Then we get to the F1 Academy gals, and it's all great again. It's because we've got the first F1 female driver since Singapore. So yeah, they paper over the cracks that way.
That's one way to look at it. Coops, what do you make of Red Bull, their first weekend after the swap, and the comments that Christian Horner made, which I thought was interesting, that he said that he has flat out admitted they don't care about the constructors this year, they only care about the drivers. I can't imagine their investors, sponsors, and board are going to be too happy about that because they don't get any bloody money for winning the drivers' championship.
No, and he's doing that. He's the ultimate politician. He's doing that to take the pressure off Yuki. Because Yuki came 12th and never got any points for the constructors, because that's his role in that team, as we all know. Red Bull, the issue they have is they're only allowed 4 drivers to drive for a team in a season. So there is a line
Oh, I
that
didn't
will.
know that.
Yeah, it was another podcast I was
It's going to
listening
be the
to.
rule where they have a Hadjar mask on, and then it turns out later it was Lindblad and
Yeah,
everyone else underneath it.
that was a very good Scooby-Doo reference there for anyone out there. Any of the younger ones listening, Google it. So, yeah, they're already screwed. I know you're saying they're completely screwed as it is, but they already are. And we've already discussed this. Like, this is decades and years of mismanagement of a situation and assets, for want of a better term, that they had that no one else has got on that grid. They've got another team in Formula One that they have control over. Like, let's not forget, your drivers are not signed for Red Bull for the Red Bull team. They're signed for Red Bull. They can go, they can be put wherever. Lando Norris signs a contract, it's for McLaren. It's not from McLaren Group, where they decide to put Lando in the GT when they decide, Le Mans, we're going to put a McLaren road car in Le Mans. And Lando, you're going in there because that's what your contract says. That's not how McLaren work. Red Bull work that way. Red Bull, it's you want you to drive for Red Bull, and we can put you wherever we would like to put you. So that's why they're allowed to move people around as much as they do. And it's just the ultimate. This is culmination of what looks, from the outside at least, just total mismanagement and borderline complete incompetence of the younger drivers. Like, everybody is marked against Verstappen, and you just can't do that. because Verstappen is who he is. Like, look at this weekend. Look at the pole. It's in the Saturday for the Japanese Grand Prix.
So there's a reason it's a one in a generation driver. You can't be a one in a generation driver if everyone's that. It's not how that works.
Exactly. It's the term I've used before is he's a unicorn driver, and it was somebody else that coined that phrase, and it was a very good way of putting it. You don't get that many, and every sport has them. Your Messis, your Ronaldos, your Federers, Nadals. Sometimes a couple of what should be generational. Like you get a couple, like you've got Rafa Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer that all came around about the same time, and other like tennis players and similar to drivers that probably would have won a lot of championships and had a bigger career, but they just arrived at the wrong time, and it can happen in Formula One. And we're kind of spoiled with having Hamilton there and Verstappen at the same time. But Red Bull, I've just got this, whether it's a subconscious thing or whether it's purely completely conscious, everybody's marked against what Verstappen can do to that car and what he can do in a race. And getting pole in Japan by was it 0.012?
0.12, yeah. 0.12.
In a car that nobody, even Red Bull, thought would get pole. Like, but they still marked.
And he didn't even do any purple sectors to achieve that either.
Yeah,
so he
that's
didn't
incredible.
So just kind of taking the piss immensely.
Yeah, and I just don't. I don't know what they do, and it makes a complete and utter mockery of their system, of what they do with the young drivers. The young drivers must be looking at Formula One now with, I'd love to drive in Formula One, but there's that wee bit of, oh, wait a minute.
There's 4 seats that you don't want, and it's okay, fair enough. We've got Cadillac coming in, so there's 2 seats more coming in. But there's still only, so next year there'll be, 8 seats that you might want in Formula One? There's still 4 you don't. Like, that's ridiculous. And there is something to be said for Zach Brown's pretty relentless push to get the second team of Red Bull removed from Red Bull's ownership. It was on the cards, I think, but I don't think it's going to happen just yet. But it's interesting how they've kind of spoiled that, and you're right about the young driver piece. But on the flip side of it, you've got McLaren, who, there's a couple of schools of thought on it. They only care about the Constructors' Championship, which they are correct to do, and I'll hear nobody argue that. They are the team, they get their money for the Constructors. I'll hear no other than that. Jack Villeneuve was saying, well, they're naive if they think just winning the Constructors will be enough this year. They have to win the drivers. They do, but in their minds, they're thinking, well, if we keep plugging away and get double podiums in every single race, we'll win the Constructors by Singapore, and then the lads can fight however much they want. Coops, what do you make of McLaren? I know it was Crofty trying to drill up some drama. They were never going to swap, but should they have given it a go? Did they trust Oscar to give the place back? What did you make of just McLaren in general this weekend?
McLaren did the best what they could have done. They blew it in qualifying. They should have been 1-2, or at least one of them at front of a 1-3 or something. They blew it. Whether it was a mistake, whether it was just one of those, to coin the football analogy, a worldie. Sometimes you can't legislate, and a striker pops a goal, a shot in the top bin, and you can't have the top corner. You can't do anything about those kind of things. And maybe that is what Max Verstappen did. He just produced the Formula One's equivalent of a worldie, and everyone just goes, do you know what? Round of applause. What do you do? But McLaren shouldn't have been in that position to be that close to Verstappen in the qualifying, and that's the point. They did the best they could. They never got to a situation. I think it was, I don't know if it was Villeneuve or it was Ted Kravitz in his notebook on Sky Sports, but one of the pundits said that to really attack Verstappen, you needed to be under 0.8 of a second or something. And
it was on the notebook. Yeah,
you couldn't. None of them were under that. I think at one point they were about 0.9, or maybe there was a wee bit when you looked at the timings. It was like, it went to 0.8, but then within about a corner, it was back to 9 a second, or about 1.5 seconds. And the amount of time to lose to allow the swap to happen for them to chase it, they just couldn't do it. It just, and this again, it's not just the cars, but also the tyres. The tyres just didn't degrade.
No,
which meant everybody could drive the way they needed to drive, the temperature probably was a big part on it. So everyone could drive pretty much full tilt. And this again comes back to like you see a lot of people when it's tire managements and stuff like that. Just let them race, and we need tires that don't degrade. Well, there's your data sample. This is what we're going to get because they all just race, and the minute you get in dirty air, they back off, and that's it.
It's
So
because it's because in that scenario it's not racing. They're still not pushing flat out because there was an unknown about the tires because it was cold, it had rained, the track was new. There was an unknown, so they were all driving around going, "Yeah, I could drive flat out, but then what if my tires do degrade and then why take a pit stop and nobody else is?" It's not. It's different to Qatar a couple of years ago where they mandated the two stops because then what that introduced and why I think like introducing a mandatory two stop might not be a bad idea for modern Formula One. It's a bit of a gimmick, but then so was DRS. We've had that for 15 years. Um, the mandatory two stop in Qatar back in 2023 meant that they all had to drive totally flat out, 100% quality laps left, right, and center, and then it became a driver's race on a track that didn't really promote overtaking at all. But there was close battles, there was overtakes on track. A couple of the cars were still wearing the tires faster than others, and it was how big are your balls going into turn one kind of thing. And it was a little bit more exciting, and the drivers were struggling with it, and some of them were throwing up in their helmets, and Logan Sargent gave up entirely. Um, so there's an element of that of people saying, "Oh, well, if the tires don't degrade, then they can race." It's the other way around. If you don't have to worry about what the tires are doing at all, degrading, not degrading, splintering, blowing up, whatever, you have to pit twice, drive them flat out. It's like back in the day when they used to refuel. They weren't really concerned about the tires, they were concerned about the fuel limits. And it's, do you drive flat out and refill, or do you fill up for the whole race and do like Michael Schumacher did? It was at Spa, and did 22 qualifying laps in a row because he could, because he wasn't concerned about if the tires are going to degrade or not, whether they will or they won't. He had the fuel to do it, he had the tires to do it, he had the car to do it. He could just drive flat out and he won the bloody race. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a Timo. What did you make of like McLaren? Bring it back to McLaren very quickly. Will they be looking at that as a that was the best they could have got as Coop said? Will they be a bit disappointed because a 1-3 is worth more than a 1-2 or than a 2-3?
I don't think they'll be disappointed because, as you both say, their primary aim, rightly so, is the Constructors' Championship, and that's where the big money is. And if they can wrap that up as soon as possible, then, like you say, if the drivers are in position to hunt for the title, then we can see the knives come out and it get a bit more fun in a different way. As for Japan itself specifically, I think it wouldn't have hurt them to try to send one of the drivers off after Verstappen. I think it was curious that they didn't have a split strategy really at
Mm,
all between the two of them because that seems to be the main thing you would do when it's 2v1 anyway, and it's against a driver and a car that shouldn't be there in the first place when you've
mm.
got the far superior machinery and according to Lando Norris, the best driver lineup on the grid, and then gets immediately disproven by half of the team. So it was a curious one, and Leclerc far back enough so that you could have the risk of it, and what's the worst that happen? You still finish second and third. So
Mm.
I get the whole stick to your plan and don't deviate from that because it's a sensible thing to do. And I think if we'd had other stuff going on elsewhere in the race, we probably wouldn't focus on this as much. But because there was such a lack of anything, we can criticize a bit more because we wanted something to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's interesting. I heard this. Someone was saying this. I think it was on a different podcast that McLaren and Red Bull are approaching the season in the same way, but for different reasons. So Red Bull's approach with Max is Max be on the podium all the damn time, and you'll do what Schumacher did in the years that the McLarens were quicker and the Renaults were quicker, and just by merit of being there all the damn time, you'll win the championship. Just that ruthless consistency of podium, second, third, first, second, third, first, second, third. Just be there. On the flip side, and that'll win on the drivers. On the flip side, that exact same approach will win McLaren the constructors. That conservative, we have a 2-3, we're going to outscore all of our rivals around us, even if it's only by, what was it, 6 points, something like that. We're going to outscore all of us. Red Bull are not a factor because they only have one driver, and even if he won every race, if McLaren were second and third to him in every race, McLaren would still win the constructors. Ferrari were far enough behind. Mercedes were far enough behind. So McLaren's approach was, why would we risk a guaranteed chunk over our rivals? But you were mentioning there about there wasn't much else to talk about, but not necessarily in the race, but in the weekend itself, there was a couple of interesting talking points. I'll brush over it really quickly. Lance Stroll is back doing Lance Stroll things. Qualified 20th, finished 20th, hops on his plane, doesn't explain why. You know, still outscoring Fernando
Legend.
Alonso. Yeah, but top marks. Interestingly, Honda came out, I think it was yesterday, and said they will have a say in the Aston Martin lineup for next year. I think they've probably done that after seeing what a fucking wet blanket Stroll is. So I find that a little bit interesting. But the other big ones of the weekend, and it's causing a little bit of news midweek, is Alpine. Um, Obviously, Jack Doohan had that massive crash, thinking he was in the simulator. Still, Coops. What do you
Mhm.
make of it? Was this Doohan's Lawson moment?
I don't know if it's lost. I think Dude's Lawson's moment was when Alpine decided to sign Colapinto as a reserve driver.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, they signed him up, and then they've signed like 14 reserve drivers. He's been in 2 Grand Prix. They took his car off him for a free practice at Suzuka and gave it to another rookie. He goes out in FP2 and bins it in the most spectacular way you can.
185 miles an hour backwards into a tire barrier.
Nicely done,
You're gonna
you know.
do it properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I mean, if you're pissed off with your employer, cost them to spend a million, more than over like millions of pounds to fix their car. Why don't you? They've since come out and said that well, they didn't know at first, and they were doing a lot of checking, and people were quite surprised. The commentators in Sky were like, "Hey, that's bizarre. Like that just went. That's weird." They came out and said that Doohan decided to try and do the corner with the DRS open. I think we discussed this prior to the recording that we're kind of a bit suspicious because
Well,
you
it doesn't
know
add up. To go back to a
the,
Scooby-Doo reference, there's some hijinks going on, and we can sniff around pretty easily that this doesn't all add up.
it just doesn't the whole situation we're doing in Alpine in pre-season testing were tipped to be best of the rest and fighting
Mm.
with Williams for it. And they've really not done anything. Their car finally, as you said, Sean, I think it was yourself, they finally managed to figure out how to do a livery with pink and blue. It doesn't look like vomit. Uh,
Yeah, because
oh,
they're not wildly overweight this year.
yeah, so they've actually now got stickers on their car. Uh, but other than that, it's just bizarre how they're managing things. I don't particularly have much confidence in their team principal either. I mean,
Mm-mm.
this is a team that had Otmar Snafsnauer as their team principal as well. I mean, Jesus. I mean, it wasn't a particularly high bar to try and get a team principal that was better than him.
It's not
Uh,
been going well since Cyril Abiteboul left, basically, and it shows. And it's a little bit like Red Bull in the sense of this has been going on for a while, and
Mm.
somehow you've still, as a team, not noticed this. The fact that you take out Doohan, a rookie, in his third race for an FP1 session, I can understand why you do it for a Japanese driver at a Japanese circuit, but why not give him Gasly's car? Gasly doesn't need
I thought that
have the
too.
experience around the
Yeah.
circuit as much. He's been more recent. Last time Doohan raced, there was an F3 Asia in 2019, so it's been a minute. And this whole thing with the DRS, if you're doing it in the simulator and it works, A, simulator, not real life. B, don't buy Doohan being that thick. C, don't buy him not telling someone about thinking I might try this and then giving him a blessing. So either they knew and said, yeah, go for it, in which case suspicious, or he decided I'm going to keep this to myself, which seems out of character for someone whose dad is Nick Doohan, and you wouldn't think that that would be something that would be in the racing DNA that gets transferred there.
Mm.
And as you say, after I think we discussed it before the podcast called, when he got out of the car and the discussions about it, you think, oh, you haven't got your story together yet. You don't know immediately because you'd be able to tell pretty quickly from everything what caused that if it is what you claimed it to be. But instead, you wait a while, and then when you piece that together with Flavio being Flavio, Oliver Oak's already kind of dismissing Doohan as early as the O2 launch, and the immense pressure he was in when he came to Australia, it all just smacks a bit too suspicious. On top of which, you've got Colapinto testing for them in Monza, going, please, no one noticed this. We noticed.
Yeah, they put him in a
Just
black.
doesn't come
They put
across
him in
well.
they put him in a lovely stealthy black car to try and think that nobody
Perfect
plastered it with
camouflage for
B.
the green scenery around
Yeah,
there. Yes.
plastered it with BWT logos. But yeah, they tried to get away with it. There's also the point that like, okay, Alpine looked okay in preseason testing, but this is as if we needed any more proof that preseason testing means nothing. Um, Alpine finished last season sixth in the constructors on 65 points. 33 of those points came in Brazil.
Mm.
Well,
Without
you
Brazil,
go.
without that one race, and okay, credit to the drivers. Ocon and Gasly did very, very well in that race to keep it on the tarmac, and most importantly, and then to lead the race and fight for Verstappen on merit. Right, fair enough. They did well in the moment. Without that freak race, Alpine were eighth behind Haas and RB. So like they're not in a good position, and the results last season flattered them to no end because of one race, where they got. I don't like saying they got lucky because I'm a firm believer
They
in
maximize an opportunity.
there you go. You put yourself in the position to get lucky, and they absolutely did that.
Mhm.
But without that, they were nowhere last year, and they're the only team not to score points this year. So that is going to be interesting. If and when Colapinto does get the call up, we will of course be doing a full breakdown news story of that. We might even do a proper look back at where it's all gone wrong for Alpine. Which would be
2018.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Which would be interesting, and the fact that they are Renault's sports division, and they won't even be using Renault engines next year because Renault can't be bothered anymore. That's what it really comes down to: is Renault don't care about Formula One, and they never have. Ever since Fernando Alonso left in 2007, Renault have not cared about Formula One. Even winning everything with Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull, they do not care about Formula One, and they never have. Um, Final bit of news then, Timo. What did Sainz get fined for?
I'm not allowed to say in the words I want to use, so I'm gonna have to try and think of something else. But
Careful, the
yeah,
FIA will fine you too.
worth it. He got fined because he missed the national anthem, which on the one hand I can understand because you've got a rule saying you've got to respect the country's national anthem that you're going to, da da da. But there are valid excuses if you do miss it. And I would have thought that having some stomach issues, going to see a doctor, and actually having a doctor's note might qualify as a valid excuse. But no, instead you get fined 20,000 euros. Okay, 10 grand of which is suspended, but still. And you just have to accept that. And they go, oh, you know what? It was 60 grand, but because you got a doctor's note, it's only going to be 20. And you still go, he wasn't well. And also, I don't think the Japanese will be too offended by this, considering what the reason is. It's not like he was going out the back and speaking in an interview, just dropping hate on Japan. He
Mm.
wasn't doing that. He was just, I'm not feeling great, guys, and I've got to get in a car in 5 minutes. Do you mind if I just have a quick look at something? So the fact that if I again have clearly solved all of their issues with the world and the universe and everything's great because we're focused on swearing and now we're focused on, oh, you missed the national anthem because you're ill. I'm glad we've solved all the other problems. That's all I'm going to say because otherwise I don't know what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Like, I didn't actually even realize he had a doctor's note for it, so that makes it even worse. And my God, Mohammed Ben Sulayem is just on a mission to be the least liked person in the world this year, isn't he?
It's working.
Yeah, it's
Stiff
even.
competition, mind you, but he's putting his best in.
Yeah, we won't name a few names, but I'm sure, I'm sure, I'm
I was
sure
going to leave it
two,
there. Don't worry.
I'm sure two people sprung immediately to a lot of people's minds on that one. Um, we will leave it at that for Japan. See, I told you there was enough to talk about to fill an episode of a podcast. Obviously, this weekend we are in the depth of a triple header now, which is exciting. The calendar has been sort of fixed this year so that there's not any random 3 and 4 week breaks in the middle of the season that are longer than the summer break like there was last year. We still get a triple header, and they are at least in the same part of the world: Japan to Bahrain to Saudi. Bahrain, of course, is this weekend. What are we expecting from it? We will have, of course, our full preview of it coming out in a couple of days. But Coops, very quickly, are you hoping for a little bit less of a wet blanket from Bahrain?
Bars set really low. Don't think we'll have much of a problem with that one.
Timo, what about yourself?
It can only get better, and that's not a dare.
It's not a glowing review, was it? Well, the other good thing about Bahrain this weekend is, of course, that if you're in Europe, UK Ireland time, the race starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So even if it is a little bit of a sodden rag, at least you haven't got up at 6 in the morning for it or 5 in the morning for it. That is this weekend, of course. I'll give you the times for the weekend. Practice one, again, UK Ireland times, half one on Friday for practice one, 4 o'clock on Friday for practice two, half one on Saturday for practice three. Qualifying is at 5 o'clock on Saturday, and then the race, as I said, is 4 o'clock on Sunday. So that is not too bad, and hopefully, as we said, indeed, exactly, it can only get better. We'll be back in a couple of days with our full preview of the Bahrain Grand Prix this weekend. So until then, all that's left for me to say is thank you to Coops.
Thank you.
And thank you, Timo.
Cheers.
This has been an interesting look at what was otherwise not the most interesting of Grand Prix, but thank you for sticking with us. If you have, we are, of course, Everything F1. Go check us out on all socials. You'll find us almost everywhere at Join F1 or on TikTok at EF1 Official. Do check out our website as well, everythingf1.com, for daily news and articles. And do head over to YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe on the channel. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers as soon as possible. The more we can build up that channel, the more we'll be able to give you some more exciting stuff. And we have a lot of exciting plans for that, but we need to hit a couple of more subscribers first. So head over to YouTube, hit subscribe, like the video. And one final call out, of course, as always, to our fantastic sponsors, theraceworks.com. Get all of your F1 and motorsport merch over at theraceworks.com and use our code EF1 at checkout for 10% off site wide. That's it. We will talk to you in a couple of days for the Bahrain Grand Prix preview. Bye now. And sorry if you're watching on YouTube, but we're going to keep going. We are now going to do that Bahrain preview. So straight into it. Just give myself a very obnoxious clap. That way I know where the split is. Hello and welcome back to the Everything F1 podcast. Oh, no, not welcome back. Welcome to. We're not supposed to be. Sorry, let's do that again. Hello and welcome to the Everything F1 podcast. Joining me, Sean, this evening to preview the Bahrain Grand Prix, the second of this current triple header, is Coops. Evening, Coops.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, thanks. And Timo, how are you?
Not too bad yourself.
Good, thanks. Same crew as before. Busy weekend of Formula One as we get into a triple header, and we are going to, of course, preview the Bahrain Grand Prix, which is coming up this Sunday. Before we do, we are Everything F1. You can check us out on all socials at Join EF1 or at EF1 Official on TikTok. Do visit us on YouTube as well. You find us there, Everything F1, all one word. Give us a like and a subscribe over there if you wouldn't mind, please. We have a lot of big plans for YouTube this year, and we need your help to do it. So if you wouldn't mind, head over to YouTube, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the channel, and give us a hand out there. That would be great. We have a lot of exciting stuff there. Also, check out our website, everythingf1.com, for daily news and articles. We're particularly busy now at the moment. As I said, we're in a triple header, and as we spoke about the other day in the Japanese review, there's lots of talking points. Red Bull have had their moment of the sun. We might be getting to Alpine next very soon. So we will keep you updated on everything at everythingf1.com. Finally, if you want any F1 or motorsport merch this season, if you're going to races or you're just a fan and you want to deck yourself out in the newest gear, check out our sponsors, theraceworks.com, and use our code EF1 at checkout for 10% off site wide. Right then, Bahrain Grand Prix. As we said in the Japan review, Timo, it can only get better. So, are you looking forward this weekend to the Bahrain Grand Prix?
I am, and I may be naive, I may be wildly optimistic, but that's just what you've got to do sometimes, I think. And Bahrain in the past has given us some very juicy races with plenty to enjoy, and it is nice, as much as I'd prefer it to be a morning race in terms of going from dark into light, as it would have been a great way to start off a season if we had to start there. Having it just at night as it is at the moment is still great with the cars and the lights look fabulous there. And I think with the heat that we're going to get, echoing a comment Mark Webber made over the weekend, we might be in for a two-stopper, which at this point we just need to have some interesting stuff, as we talked about in the Japanese Grand Prix review. You can really push the cars then. There's no kind of cautionary tales happening anywhere. Everyone's just got to go full for it, have those battles. We can have plenty of overtakes on multiple parts of the track with and without DRS. Obviously, you've got the two back-to-back DRS straights, but as Fernando Alonso proved on Lewis Hamilton a couple of years ago, turn 10, I think, you can easily slide in there with surprisingly enough of room there. And as other drivers have proven in turn four and even turns 5 and 6, you can risk it and just about make it and get that biscuit. So I'm hoping that we have an interesting Grand Prix, and I think it's another track where once we're at the end of this triple header, we're definitely going to have more of an understanding of where everyone sits in the pecking order. And because we had testing there, but we didn't go straight back there, it might not be as clear cut as we're getting used to this season. And possibly I'll just settle for whoever gets pole doesn't win, which is now going to be typical of a driver I want on pole not winning. But there we go.
Well, that's an interesting point you made there because obviously we have preseason testing here as we have done for several years now, but where previously Bahrain has acted as the opening Grand Prix for the last several years, it's gone back to Australia now. And last year, the Grand Prix last year was on the 2nd of March, so well over a month later. So, Coops, is this the first, as Timo suggested there, is this the first kind of proper test, the track that they've tested at, that they all know, the exception being Lawson and Sonoda in cars that they didn't test in preseason, but also, as we spoke about during the Japan review, it's a bigger track. There are more opportunities for overtake. We've had some classics here. The Duel in the Desert in 2014 always springs to mind. What do you rate of Bahrain? Are you excited for this weekend?
Oh yeah. I quite like Bahrain. I don't know why. Maybe it's the subconscious thing of I tend to like the tracks that I can do well when I used to play it on the computer, because I'm awful at driving games. Uh, so
Into runoff
yeah,
area.
yes, there's a lot of runoff area and there's flashbacks. That was a good thing about those games. Uh, I just don't put myself through it anymore. For anyone that's asking, no, I do enjoy it. It's a track that, as you say, it's wide. It's most people, even if you're not in the car you started the season with, will know what's going on. The higher temperatures should add an extra bit of a dimension to it, as we saw the colder temperature in Japan kind of limited what were the spectacle and how the race could have panned out. So yeah, I think, and also to caveat as well, I'm actually looking forward to watching Formula One in the afternoon. This is quite good for us in the UK.
Yeah,
Uh,
it certainly is. We don't have a late race in our time zone until Vegas, I think.
Which is
Um,
uh,
late.
the
that's
next awkward
late.
one. Yeah, next awkward one. Yes, Bahrain this weekend. Let's have a quick look at the track details. So, course length is 5.412 kilometers in its current guise. There have been multiple different versions of the Bahrain Grand Prix, but the main one that we race on every year is 5.412 kilometers. It'd be 57 lap race, just over 308 kilometers. And as Timo correctly suggested, it is set to be scalding hot this weekend. Weather report for Sunday is highs of 32 degrees. Low enough humidity, so that'll at least help the drivers to, not cook to death, like they would in the likes of, say, Singapore or back in the days in Malaysia, where the humidity gets up to 80-90%, and that was the killer. I'm not saying 32 degrees is cold. Evening weather, it might be down about 25, but it will still be hot. That surface temperature is going to be very hot, and hopefully that does mean that we get a little bit more action from a tire strategy point of view. Pole position last time out last year was Max Verstappen. It was a 129.1. The way the cars are going this year, you could probably put a safe bet on something in the mid to low 127s this year, all going well. And last year's podium was Max in first, Sergio Perez in second. Jeez, do you remember the days when he was able to do stuff like that? And Carlos Sainz in third for Ferrari. Straight off the bat, that's a different makeup to this year, Timo. We'll get into like predictions later on, but a lot could change in a year. Sainz and Perez on the podium with Max. That is, well, entirely unlikely this year.
Definitely for one of them more than the other, I'll say that much off the bat. That's very easy to say. If we get signed on the podium for this weekend, maybe we're back in business, but who knows? Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. Like you say, the difference a year makes. The rookies, a lot of them will have raced there in F2 and F3 over the years. FP1's going to be worth watching this weekend as well because we've got three drivers that are currently announced to be sitting out in place of rookies coming in,
Mm.
which is always going to be exciting, especially in the heat of Bahrain. They're used to it, but not necessarily F1 machinery too much. And it's Dino Beganovic, Luke Browning, and Felipe Drugovich. So a bit of a mixture. They've all had a bit of experience, but again, it's nice to see that at a track where it makes sense. And I think if you'd pick doing out of the car anywhere, it would have been here, but that's a thing for another day.
Mm.
Um, But yeah, everything's kind of teed up nicely to be quite interesting weekend. And as I say, you've got F2 and F3 having drivers raced there before. They are also back this weekend. So if you like your feeder series action, you are spoiled for choice. And I don't think there's too much of a risk of the F2 feature race getting washed out this weekend. So you're going to get a full weekend of racing from all of them, I'd say, barring any weird testing red flag calamities.
Oh, I sincerely hope so. I'm a big fan of F2 and F3. Obviously, Alex Dunn, big fan of his. Let's hope that he can have a good weekend in Formula 2 this year. Well, this weekend in particular. Coops, though, Max is on a bit of a streak here, which won't surprise many people. He's won the last two races. He won in 23 and 24. Um, is he going to make it back to back? We were all very, very surprised that he took it on pole in Japan. Even he was surprised he put it on pole in Japan, and it was a lights the flag victory. But I suppose the big question for this weekend is, will Max continue that, or given the race pace, the test they did in the preseason test, is this McLaren's to kind of take the swing and the news back in their direction this weekend?
No, I mean, I don't think it's swung too far away from McLaren, in all honesty, from Suzuka. So I think McLaren's will still be the cars to beat. If anyone's going to beat them, it's probably going to be Max.
Hmm.
I don't think Ferrari have quite got things together. I don't think that Mercedes are quite at that point. They're still in that do nothing for 99% of the race and appear in fourth or fifth or third or whatever it is that George Russell tends to do. Uh, so no, it's difficult. I can't say it with too much confidence after the performance he did at Suzuka and that lap that he put in and how he managed to keep things where he did. Uh, you can never write him off. You can never say, "Oh, definitely not, 100%." Like it's almost like when he was dominating, you could pretty much guarantee he was going to win, and we kind of breezed over it. Yeah, Max is first, right? So anyway, who's second and third?
Hmm.
And again, it's almost a similar. It's almost very similar in a sense of even with inferior machinery, which even he said he's not a fan of. You still can't write him off because you could just fling it in there and get first, or he could be second and get himself in front. Because let's face it, the first few corners in Bahrain are pretty good for getting things mixed up and people diving down insides and getting round the outsides and getting themselves in positions for the next part of the lap. So, do I think he will? Probably not. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Yeah, Max did get in front of the McLarens.
To make another reference that I'm sure you'll enjoy, it does feel like whenever he's in an inferior car or not expected to do what he usually has done for the past few years, kind of from the midpoint on of last year, is to be Barney Grubble in that in the meme with Mo, and Mo chucks him out and he just appears right behind you. And you go, Jesus, how did you get there?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. I'm gonna have to dig that one out to flash it up for somebody who, for some reason, has not been on the internet in the past. Yeah, I think that's a really, really good way of putting it. And again, we spoke about it in the Japan review that McLaren and Red Bull are approaching the season in a similar way, but for different reasons. McLaren's approach is get both drivers on the podium all the time, and they'll run away with the Constructors' Championship because that for the team is the one that matters. And the sooner they do that, the sooner the boys can start crashing into each other and fighting for the drivers. On the flip side of it, Christian Horner admitted in Japan that they don't care about the constructors this week. And Coops, you rightly pointed out, that's a PR spin because there's no way do their investors and their board not care about the constructors championship. But their approach for that is if Max is just on the podium all the time, well, then he'll win the drivers championship because all the others are going to be taking points off each other all the time. And he's just sitting there with nobody to do that for him. And it would be that Schumacher-esque relentless consistency that will do it for even Hamilton-esque relentless consistency that'll do it for him. It does work. We've seen it multiple times. Schumacher a couple of times. Hamilton, of course. Nico Rosberg in 2016. Jensen Button. You get there, you stay there, and you can keep yourself in the conversation, keep scoring high points. That's how to win. You don't have to win every single race like Vettel used to do, but
Again,
score
famously, Bortoletto, I think in Formula 3, won that title without winning a race.
without winning a race. Yeah, exactly. So and his Formula Two champion he only won one race, if I'm not wrong, one or two races. So
Yeah, yeah.
Mick Schumacher won his F2 championship without winning a race. He was because he was on the podium in almost every single race, sprint and feature race for the whole season. And it's that relentless consistency. Quick one on Ferrari then. Obviously, they had the disqualification in China a couple of weeks ago because of a low floor. There's been talk that that mandate actually came from Lewis, that he wanted the car quite low. And conspiracy theory, though this may be, Ted Kravitz had a theory that in the building of the relationship between driver and engineer, driver and team, they were maybe a little bit afraid to say no to Lewis because he wanted the car lower to suit him a bit better. And they said, yeah, okay. And then they all suffered for it. Lewis was saying in Japan, he goes, "This isn't. It's not as. It's the car is not set up how I want it," which you could read as it's not as low as I wanted, but I now don't have a choice because it was sort of my fault and the team's fault. But big upgrades coming to the Ferrari this weekend, namely a floor update for Lewis's car in particular. Big updates coming that they are hoping will work. But will it, Timo? Do you think this will make a difference to Ferrari? Again, perfect track to do it at.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see which way it swings on that one because going back to what Chris was saying earlier in terms of who's going to maybe run away with it this weekend, I think if there was ever a time to throw some spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, Mercedes and Ferrari should do that this weekend because it's one of those tracks where you can risk it a bit more and you can push everyone, you can just see, you can play your hand a little bit more, and it would be interesting to see with Ferrari how much the floor comes into it. And Ferrari have been strong here, like you say. Carlos Sainz was on the podium here last year. Charles finished fourth, and obviously they had the 1-2 in 2022, straight off the back of it, and they were going to be on the podium regardless of what Red Bull were doing with deciding to just have their cars die on the mid race.
Stop on the last lap.
Yes. Um, so will it make a difference? It'll be interesting to see. I think if Hamilton favours that lower floor, then where he ends up in the pecking order would be quite fascinating to see. Whereas Leclerc, obviously, he's just been bedded into that team for so much longer. He's adapted to various different things that the team have done over the years. Some that have been to his liking, some that obviously going to not have been, just as that's the nature of how this all goes.
Mm.
So I'd expect maybe Leclerc to be the one where they protect him a little bit more and they use Hamilton as the risk taker in the way that maybe McLaren should have done in Japan with their two drivers to split the strategy. And at that point, we'll be able to see how much the floor impacts.
Mm.
And again, you've got all the sparks coming out, so it's going to be interesting to see again. You want to make sure you've measured everything damn well this time.
Yeah, very good point. Obviously, because it's a night race, we get to see a lot more of the sparks. But it's a relatively high speed track and high speed with relatively high speed corners, and high speed means that the cars are bottoming out. Coops, any other particular call outs this weekend? Aston Martin had a double point score here last year. Is that possible this weekend? Will we finally see Fernando Alonso get a point this season?
No, no, that can't.
He'll
That,
get
that
multiple
can't.
points. That's what he means. It's not going to be 1 point, it's multiple points. It's clearly what he
No,
meant.
he's not. He's that Aston Martin's a dog. I don't know what they've done. They've designed themselves into a cul-de-sac or whatever it is. They aren't able to design themselves out. They're stuck with it, and they're just flinging all the money at Adrian and hope they can fix something for 2026. I have a sneaky suspicion, like we touched on it in the last podcast, that Stroll already knows he isn't racing next year, so he just doesn't care. He's just he's just phoning it in, qualify last, finish last, jump in your plane, disappear, as you said in the last podcast, Sean. So yeah, I don't see Aston Martin getting anywhere near the points. I may be wrong, but I just don't see it. I just can't see it, in all honesty.
So who's ahead of them this weekend then? Is it a fight for those last points positions between Williams, Haas, and RB this weekend?
So is it everyone?
I was just about to say everybody else. Maybe not the stakes, maybe they're running about there, but everyone else after that. I would probably say those three teams are probably the three teams that you're looking at to try and get some points. I would like to see Carlos Sainz kind of just get a weekend together.
Same.
I don't know what it is about Red Bull. No, I don't know what it is about the Williams that he just can't get to grips with, and then maybe that's just we're just seeing the nuances between each team's cars. When he was told that he wasn't going to be staying at Ferrari, he was an absolute machine in the Ferrari. He goes to Williams. Clearly, it's got fundamental differences, and he's just not quite grasping it. So that's probably outside of seeing how McLaren does, how Red Bull do, or Max Verstappen. I really just want to see what Carlos can do, and I really hope he can hook it together. I'll say that, and he'll be out in Q1, but that's my hope at least.
I'd agree with you on that. I don't know if I saw it on LinkedIn today that the Williams team have a big banner outside their factory in Grove, that says we are fifth in the championship right now. And I love that. I really, really love that. There's a lot of
Is
people
there
in
that
the
little asterisk at the end of it, and then the right now is in really small writing at the
for
bottom?
right for now. No, big poster, like about 10 feet wide, right? Big thing. And all the comments are, oh, why are you celebrating that? It's only been 3 races. How can you say it's really embarrassing? I think they are spot on to do this, and this is James Vowles down to a T. They have already scored more points in 3 races than they did in the entirety of last season, or the season before, or the season before that. So they are in very, very good form. And bear in mind, as Coops rightly said, it's sort of only with one driver so far. Alex Albon has been in phenomenal form. And what better way to motivate your team who are currently working on a brand new rules regulations car next year, where the opportunities are endless for them? Motivate them to say, look what your results, look what your work has already achieved. You've already outdone an entire year of work last year in 3 months, in 3 races.
And the last time that they scored 3 races in a row was 2017, bear in mind, with Massa.
Yes, it
So
was when their
it's
car
right
was
to be motivating you with the poster outside, like you say. It's like, this is, of course, a celebration because look when the last time we did
yeah,
this was. He's
exactly. And
not
the
just
car
left the sport, or left the team, rather. He's left the sport, and we've been through a lot of drivers since then.
Yeah, the car was pretty good in 2017. Didn't Stroll get a podium for them in Baku that
Baku.
year? So the car was decent in 2017. You're right. So that's 8 years ago. Like it's a long time since Williams have been like had anything really to shout about. So just wanted to shout that out. I think on the topic of Williams, I'd love to see Carlos Sainz have a weekend as well. And again, this is the track to like he's done the preseason testing here. Any changes or tweaks or setup changes he wants to do to the car to suit him a bit better, this is the place to do it because they have the data of how Alex looks and how Carlos looks in the current version of the car, and this is the right place to do direct testing. Also, they have a full weekend, a full weekend with no rain, with no anything. It's not going to get washed out. They have a full. Well, Carlos Sainz at least is going to have a full 3 practice sessions to.
Two.
Is he giving up the car?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was Alex giving up the car. Oh well, even still, 2 full practice sessions to get it right. Like it still makes a big difference. Alpine,
Yes,
they're always a
they'll
point
be
of line
there.
for
They'll
me.
definitely be there.
They will be there. No, you're right. They will be there at a race that will happen this weekend. Which is spitting out the facts.
Can
Last
move
year,
on.
last year they finished 17th and 18th. Ocon 17th, Gasly 18th. And predicting any worse than that this year? I think Gasly will probably do a little bit better than that this year. Timo, what do you think of Alpine's chances this weekend?
It's
That says
not
a lot.
looking great, is it? To be honest, it much like you asked me at the start, what are you hoping for this weekend? But it can only get better, and that's what I'm kind of hoping for Alpine. Because again, it's this weird thing of all the stuff behind the scenes I'm not a big fan of. Gasly, I don't mind too much, but doing in that Alpine with the delivery that they finally got right with his neat helmet, it just looks very, very nice, and I want him to do well based off that. But then that obviously means that the team does well, and I'm then conflicted. So I don't know where to go on this, but I think as long as you just do better than last year, which again,
Mm.
the bar is low, then fingers crossed. But
Coops,
oof, they don't make it easy for themselves.
no, they certainly don't. They are the only team yet to score. And this weekend again, it's becoming like Barcelona used to be. Especially now that it's a bit later in the season, it's fitting that mold a bit more. You do testing, you go somewhere else for 3 races that are completely irrelevant, and you come back to the testing track. Um, and it's an opportunity for them this weekend. But do you sense, and we spoke about it in the Japan review earlier on in the week, and we'll leave a link to that if you want to go have a listen back to that, that the pressure is mounting on doing it. Was always there, and his spectacular crash in practice made it worse, and then immediately you see the news the Colapinto's testing in Monza. Like, is it a case that they're in the middle of a triple header and it's just too logistically awkward to put Colapinto in the car now, and we'll see him in whatever's after Saudi, Imola, Miami?
I think it's one of them. Yeah. I try not to think too much about the Miami race. It's just when I have to think about it, I'll
It's
think about
Miami.
it. Oh, there
Yeah,
you go.
sorry.
Okay, thanks. But Colapinto's coming in at some point. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Doohan could fling that Alpine in third and fourth and fifth, and Flavio will still put Colapinto in that car because that's what Flavio wants to do. It doesn't matter what Doohan does. Doesn't matter if they come out with some dodgy ass explanation for the big crash in Suzuka, and then basically throw Doohan under the bus and say, "Yeah, he done that." It's like Colapinto's coming in, but yeah, I just don't. I don't know what Alpine are doing, and this is another weekend where they've got a car that looks decent, and they're not putting the pieces together for whatever reason. And Gasly seemed like he was enjoying himself, and earlier on in the season, pre-season testing, he was enjoying himself and looking like, yeah, he's finally got everything together. He's relaxed. He's got a car that works under him. But no, Alpine will do what Alpine do and find a way to mess it up.
Yeah, they certainly will. And we mentioned it during the week on the last show that we will probably need to do a full deep dive into Alpine. I think they've earned one, and it'll probably come when, not if, they make the driver swap of Doohan to Colapinto or Paul Aaron, who was testing with them in Monza as well. Kind of came out of nowhere, and didn't they take Rio Harikawa as well? Like
Yep.
they have
They've got
an
3 or
endless
4,
supply.
at least.
Pushmani is the fourth one.
Yeah. Yeah, so there you go. Exactly as Timo said previously, it's they for some reason looked at Red Bull and thought, "Oh, you guys do business really well with young drivers, so let's just sign all of them." I think it was 10 million they bought Colapinto out of his contract for. They didn't do that for him to like drive a stealthy 2-year-old car in Monza once.
It's Alpine. They might have. You just don't know.
That's fair.
It's also a 3-year deal that Colapinto's got.
Yeah,
There
it's a
is
big
no way a driver is signing a deal for 3 years to sit and be a reserve driver. He's been given a guarantee he's going to be in the
Make
race.
sure you clip this to use against him in 3 years' time when he looks like a silly goose for saying this.
No, I think you're dead right. And actually, I know I just said that, will they wait until the end of the triple header, and it works perfectly for them. We've got Japan, Bahrain, Saudi, and then what's after that? Miami. Where's that close to? The closest to South America they're coming at this time of the year. Miami will be full of Argentinian fans. It will be anyway. And you announced the Colapinto's going into that. They'll probably do it the Monday after Saudi. The Colapinto will be in the car for Miami, and you watch how white and blue that stadium turns. Think how big they were in Brazil for them. They'll be mad for and Texas last year as well. They'll be mad for Miami. I think I'll clip that one too, and I might go back and remove it if I've gotten that really wrong. Let's get on then to a bit of fun predictions for the weekend then. Timo, who is going on pole position on Saturday?
Oscar Piastri.
Ooh, there's a shout. What makes you say Oscar
Contraries.
Piastri? Just on vibes, or?
It just feels like it's the kind of thing Oscar Piastri would do.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Coops, what about you? Do you think it's something Oscar will do, or is someone going to do it better than him?
No, I was going to say Oscar.
Interesting. Okay, so we're 2 out of 3. I'm going to say Lando for pole this weekend, but we are really showing our McLaren bias now, lads. Top 3 in the race then, Timo. Who's first, second, and third?
So don't worry, the McLaren bias ends here. I'm going to say, let's go a bit fun with this. Russell's going to win, Hamilton in second, Verstappen in third.
Oh, that is a wild one.
What the hell happened at the start of your race?
Happened to Oscar Piastri? Is this the McLarens having their Mercedes Barcelona 2016 moment?
No, that's just going to be a good race.
Okay, well, I think George Russell is due a race win this season. I think he'll definitely get one. Didn't think it'd be this soon, but that is a shout. Coops, your top 3.
Before I go into that, just for everyone to know, that is Timo's overcompensating for such a poor Japanese Grand Prix.
I got Verstappen pole.
You did, but yeah, sometimes when you get one right, you have to rein in that ego before you start going a bit wild.
I've not learned that lesson yet.
No, not yet.
No. I should know about Eagle, to be fair. Anyway, moving on.
Your top three.
My top three: Oscar, Hamilton, Verstappen.
Oscar, Hamilton, Verstappen. Oh, where does Lando go in your scenario?
Oh, he'll be out. He's retired.
Oh, interesting. Oh, well, I'm gonna bring him back into the fall. I'm going to say Lando. I'm going to say Lando, Charles, George.
What happened to Oscar?
Uh, Max hit him.
Oh,
Outside the car.
well,
My,
we've set this up to be
we really have.
completely disappointed, haven't we?
My next question was going to be one wild prediction, but I think we've all kind of got a bit mad on that. So outside of
I
the
can
top
give you
three,
one if you want.
wild prediction outside of the top three, Timo.
Doing P5.
Doing P5.
Nice.
You do know this is Bahrain, not Brazil.
Yeah. You wait till he gets to Brazil.
Coops, one wild prediction outside of the top three.
Oh damn.
He's
Okay, I'm
he's
kind
taking the
of.
good one, isn't he?
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. Yuki Tsunoda gets fourth.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. I'm going to say Fernando Alonso scores 10 points. No, 10 points is too much. I'm going to say Fernando Alonso. 10 points is fourth place, isn't it? That's not realistic.
Yeah,
Or fifth place. That's not realistic at all. Fernando
It's a wild
Alonso.
prediction. It's allowed.
that's a wild one. Yeah,
Okay,
Yuki.
Fernando leaves Bahrain ahead of Stroll in the championship, which means he has to score 11 points or 10 points with a better result. There we go. That's wild. That is really wild. I think we have either cooked there or we are straight into the glacier.
Oh, we went mental there, lads. This is going to be an interesting podcast when we go
This
back and discuss our predictions.
this
If I don't get any of them, you won't see me for a while. I need to go and just have a think about what I've done.
rethink your life choices on this one. If anybody from Formula One happens to be watching, this is what happens after a boring race. So, fix the cars. Right then, Bahrain Grand Prix. I'll give you the times again for it before we finish up this weekend. Normal times if you are in Europe, UK Ireland times for these. Friday 12:30 for practice 1, Friday 4 o'clock for practice 2, Saturday 1:30 for practice 3, and 5 o'clock for qualifying. And then the race is a perfectly lovely 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Um,
Delightful.
Yes, very, very delightful. So we will look forward to that. We'll be back next week with a review, hopefully a little bit more interesting than Japan was. So I will say thank you to Coops
Thank you.
and thank you to Timo.
Cheers.
And we will see probably one of you next week, and one of you might be hiding under a rock after those bizarre predictions. Or we are all coming back, and our YouTube channel is about to explode because of how much we've cooked on that one. So it'll be one or the other. I hope it's the latter. Thank you all very, very much for listening. Do hit subscribe wherever you are listening. If you enjoyed the show, you've obviously on all podcast streams, or especially on YouTube. We have a new target now to hit 500 subscribers. The YouTube channel is new. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot to us. It'd mean the world to us if you'd head over to YouTube. You'll find us Everything F1, all one word over there. Hit like and subscribe on the channel there and on the video. You'll find us on all socials as well, at Join EF1 or on TikTok at EF1 Official. And again, as I said before, we are busy at the moment. We're in the middle of a triple header, so check out everythingf1.com, our website, for daily news and articles of all things F1, F2, F3, motorsport. We'll be very, very, very busy this weekend. Thank you as always as well to our sponsors, theraceworks.com. If you're looking for F1 or motorsport merch, if you're going to a race or you just want to deck yourself out in the newest kit, check out theraceworks.com and use code EF1 at checkout for 10% off site-wide. That'll do it. Enjoy the Bahrain Grand Prix, and we will see you next week. Bye now.
Goodbye.